following the guidelines does not lead to better health. And in fact, that's what the science demonstrates. So this is why I feel like it's an incredibly urgent, important mission for the public health and for good science and good policy to ensure that the dietary guidelines are evidence-based.
I was impressed with the Nutrition Coalition's effort to get people to send messages to the US Dietary Guidelines board or whatever, and letting them know what we think about how things are. In other words, well, you've got to be wrong about this, so quit talking about how bad cheese is what I told them. But that was an impressive effort.
Well, so one of the things that we've been able to tap into is the enormous surge and energy that exists out there in the world now among people who are regaining their health, getting off all their medications, losing weight, reversing their diabetes, which is supposed to be medically impossible, but doing all of these things by doing the absolute reverse of the guidelines, right? Ignoring the guidelines. Instead of eating at this over 50% of their calories of carbs, bringing that way down, right? And instead eating healthy fats and protein. And these people feel passionately, they feel passionately because they've regained their own lives. Maybe they also feel the sense of the tragedy of having lost their parent to diabetes and knowing that that was avoidable, right? And until the Nutrition Coalition, there hasn't been a group, it's all very new, but a group to kind of channel all of those, that passion and let people have a voice. Yeah. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is jointly along with the Department of Health and Human Services, they jointly publish the dietary guidelines. But this year, USDA is taking the lead in the process. And the next guidelines are due out 2020. And this time USDA said, rather than review all the science, we're going to just select certain topics for review. And among those topics that they listed for potential review, which I was optimistically thinking, this is because the science isn't right. They listed low carbohydrate diets, which until now have not been publicly reviewed, even though there's more than 70 randomized controlled clinical trials on them. So low carbohydrate diets and saturated fats. Two topics that we know the guidelines are wrong on. And so we, the Nutrition Coalition, issued an appeal. People got on board. Of the 6,000 comments that were public comments that were submitted to USDA over these issues, nearly 3,000 of them were on the topics that we had suggested.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Saturated fats and low carb diets. And I think that's because we put out the appeal to people and people want to see good science in their guidelines.
Wow, that speaks volumes. And congratulations on that. You're leading the way on the revisions, and I think it's very impressive.
Well, we hope we can be successful. What we're up against is formidable, right?
Yes.
All public health institutions, the entire U.S. government, big pharma, big carb, we're really up against some formidable players. But
people speak.
People speak, and people are angry that they've been lied to.
Well, I know that because in my business, I was a health and fitness professional forever and part of the American Heart Association for 11 years. And I was all in. I was so dedicated. And then to find that the information that I was, giving to seminars and my students and my clients, and I find out that it was wrong, I am furious. I just don't show it. But inside, the wheels are turning, I'm telling you. It's very disturbing. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your interview with Dr. Mark Hyman, which was 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you've looked at the numbers, but there have been over 14,000 views of that video in 2 weeks. Okay, wow. So I watched it twice, and I wanted to make a couple of comments. Number one is it was a great overview of your book. And the second thing was I liked the fact that there was new science and kind of an update on new science that was sort of added to what your book, talked about, which was very refreshing. So congratulations on that. You and Dr. Mark Hyman really hit some hot spots.
Well, thank you. He's a lovely person to talk to. He's, he's at the Cleveland Clinic and is really trying to move medicine there. He's somebody who I think has the ability to talk to people on all sides of the debate. So I was really happy to be on his. I think that was the second podcast that he did in his new podcast series called Pharmacy with an F. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for watching it. I'm glad you liked it.
Well, I've watched all of your videos and I've listened to all of your podcast interviews and in multiple times, in fact, because, I, as a health educator, all of this information that you are delivering is important for people like me who don't have a big voice, but are talking to, communities, groups, small groups, of course, families and people down the street or at the grocery store, and of course through our blogs. But it's hopefully the whole thing about cheese is it's not really the changes that I'm trying to promote. It's not really about cheese as it is using cheese as a vehicle to open the dialogue, because who doesn't love cheese, right?
So let me turn that question back on you. So what is the entry point, the question, the comment that you find works well with people when you're trying to open their mind about something, where they say, I couldn't possibly eat cheese. I don't want to.
Here's the question, and it happens a lot. I do this a lot. I could be in any group, any party, any convention, at any store, and the first thing I'm going to do, usually if I have a shirt on like this, it opens the dialogue pretty quickly. But I'll say, okay, what do you think? Is cheese healthy? And they'll say, oh my goodness, no, I can't. My doctor told me not to eat, it goes on and on and on. But this is interesting. I was recently in a cheese shop, a specialty cheese shop in a large city in the United States. I'm not going to say which one. And one of the part-time workers is a cardiac nurse. And so, I'm got all my cheese. She's packing them up and, and everything, and I'm paying for the cheese. And I say, oh, how long have you worked here? And she goes, oh, a couple of weeks, but I'm just part-time. I'm a cardiac nurse at XYZ hospital. And I say, well, gosh, you're in the right place because you get to eat all this cheese. She says, oh, no, I can't. I really can't eat very much of this cheese. And she went on about, the whole thing, the fat.
LDL cholesterol. Yeah.
Like, what? I didn't know what to do. I mean, I know the owner, so I didn't want to make a scene, but it made me realize that it is, the news still is, it's not getting out. It's scary.
Yeah. So what is your opening state? What is the line you use? How do you get people thinking on this? I mean, do you say cheese is eaten for millennia? Cheese is an ancient food long before obesity, diabetes, and heart disease.
You want to know the truth? I'll tell you the truth. You want to know the truth?
Yeah.
I talk about your book. I'm serious. I have walked through airports. I have taken this in the store. I'm surprised it's not all ragged, but the first thing I say is, well, first of all, I'm a health professional and I have been investigating and researching this topic for a couple of years. And I think you probably don't have a lot of time. I'm talking to the person, at the store.
Yeah.
You don't have an hour for me to talk about it. So I want you to write down this book, The Big Fat Surprise, and I write it down, and usually on my business card, Healthy Cheese Lady. That works. And then I'll mention your book, and I'll really, really take a look at that. And then I will say something like, okay, well, I've got a blog, and I'll tell them the blog, and I'll say I've been writing about cholesterol and the fat and all the calories and all this stuff in cheese. And so eventually I say I'm writing a book, which I actually am. But and so that will trigger some real deep questions like, oh, I thought my cholesterol was too high. My doctor told me to stop eating cheese and whole fat milk and all this stuff. And I said, well, guess what? Your doctor's wrong. So that's how it works.
Well, thank you very much.